estimated that up to 50% of runners suffer from them at some point in their career. And it's believed that that number is even higher in marathon and ultramarathon runners. Over the years, as a dedicated runner and coach, I've experienced my fair share of challenges on the road and the track. It's safe to say I've delved deep into the world of running. Along the way, I've absorbed knowledge from podcasts, devoured books, and dissected the science, but more importantly, I've had thousands and thousands of conversations with fellow runners. What I've discovered along the way, the most misunderstood concept in running, cramping. I've learned that most runners have no idea what causes it, where it comes from, or how to get rid of it. In this video, we're going to reveal exactly what causes them, and more importantly, how to prevent them.
Linz, before we dive into what is the most commonly asked question that we get, which is how you stop it from happening, let's dive into what causes it and why it's so misunderstood.
The thing is, runners often get confused about cramps. They can be caused by so many different things. They can be caused from dehydration, they can be caused from a lack of minerals, most commonly caused by fatigue. And the reality is that all runners are different. Their cramps are caused by different things, and this means that we respond to different things, and therefore it's very difficult to decide and figure out what is going to prevent cramping for you. And that is what we want to unpack as we go through this video.
Lindsey, now that we know why they are such a misunderstood concept, before we discuss what prevents them, we need to know what causes them. Lindsey, what is the root cause of cramping?
So to understand the root cause of cramping, we must understand the mechanism of muscle contraction. Essentially, muscles are made of little filaments called actin and myosin. And in response to nervous impulses, those filaments will bind to each other and twist into each other. That's what causes the muscle contraction. And once that contraction is over, they need to relax and to twist out of each other. So that is the mechanism of the cramping. Those signals that are sent to the muscle are controlled by the nerves, and nerves are controlled by the transfer of electrolytes, mostly calcium and sodium, along those nerves. And in between the nerves are little gap junctions, and that's why we need those electrolytes to go across that bridge and therefore stimulate the next one in the chain, and eventually it gets to the muscle. Now, because of the importance of the electrolytes in that process, because of the fact that those spaces are actually filled with fluid, that is the reason why dehydration and electrolytes have been the blame for cramping for so many years, and why people recommend things like electrolytes, etc., during exercise. What we have found, however, is that less than 30% of cramping is caused by electrolytes. So unless you are somebody who is cramping at night or at rest, the chances of nutrition or electrolytes being responsible for your cramping are very, very low. The reality is that the vast majority of cramping is from something we call cross-bridge fatigue. And that is a delay in signaling as the contractions become weaker and weaker and are sustained for shorter and shorter in response to us getting tired and not having enough energy available to continue with those contractions. And because of that delay, there is a slow process that starts to happen where there's an overlap between the signal of one muscle, in this example I'm going to use the quad, and the relaxing of its agonist or antagonist, the hamstring. So two muscles are always working together. So as there's a delay in the signaling for the one muscle to cramp and the other one to relax, we get a crossover where the two muscles are contracting at the same time, and that is when we get a cramp. And a cramp is a full involuntary muscle contraction, and that is why it is so violent and so uncontrollable, because the entire muscle that is now supposed to be relaxing goes into a full contraction and you feel like you can't do anything. And so in short, fatigue is the number one reason why runners cramp. It's also why it becomes more prevalent as we go to the marathon and beyond.
Linz, I know that you're going to talk about what you can do to prevent them in just a little bit, but I think it's important that we just differentiate between the different types of spasms. So night spasms versus cramping during a race versus, general sort of cramps.
Look, it's a really important differentiation, because I think if you are suffering from cramps during your normal daily activities or at night, then there is a good chance that you are suffering from some form of electrolyte imbalance and or are probably in a fairly dehydrated state all the time. Whereas if you are cramping during exercise and cramping while you are sleeping or doing normal activities of daily living, that again probably points forward to the fact that you might need to look at something in your diet to try and help prevent your cramping during running. But again, although it's repetition, it's important to understand that more than 70% of cramping during activity is caused from fatigue. And that is purely because there is a weakness or a tiredness that is developing as we are repeating the act of contracting and relaxing our muscles in endurance events.
Thanks, Linz. Now that we've covered all of this, what can we do to prevent them in the first place?
Well, Shona, it does give us two possibilities. And while only 30% of cramping is caused by either dehydration and or electrolyte imbalance, it is worth having a look, because if it works, it is of course a fairly easy solution. The trick is that there isn't an electrolyte that is responsible for causing cramping. It could be calcium, could be sodium, could be potassium. And we know with sodium in particular that you can get cramping from both too little or too much. And so while it is worth having a look at your electrolyte intake so that we can see if that is the cause of your cramping, you are going to be one of the lucky 1 in 3 athletes if that does in fact help you and is a solution for you. For the rest of us, it literally boils down to training, because the longer we can prevent the fatigue from creeping in, the longer we can go without getting cramp. So training properly and being on a proper structured plan that takes care of all your physiological requirements is the first and most obvious step. Doing the appropriate strength training to complement your running training is the second step. And that is because strong muscles are fatigue resistant muscles. And so strength is literally one of the best ways to prolong or prevent cramping. During a particular activity or event, one of the strategies that you can use to delay the onset of fatigue is also to incorporating a run-walk strategy into your race, particularly when we move to the marathon and beyond. That will go a long way to preventing early onset of cramp. And one of the difficult things about cramping and why so many runners ask this question is that people who do cramp always tend to cramp. And we spend most of our interventions to try and prolong when that cramping starts. And walking is an excellent strategy to help really prolong if and when you start to cramp.
Okay, Lindsey, that's really great from a practical point of view, but what can you do if it's happening to you on race day?
Yeah, Shona, that's a good question. And there are some ergogenic aids that we can use that will prevent the severity of cramping, and again, in some instances, can prevent or stop cramping. Pickle juice and cayenne pepper are great examples of this. And the mechanism there is that what the pickle juice and the cayenne pepper actually do is that they block out receptor sites, which force the coordination of the contractions to stabilize. And that is how it either prevents or reduces the severity of the cramping.
That sounds great, Linz, but I don't really want to be running with a jar of pickles during my race.
Yeah, so fortunately, Shona, there are a couple of supplement companies that have got formulations that have got either just pickle juice or cayenne pepper or some similar extracts. But again, as I said, it's definitely worth trying if you are someone who cramps. It's all good and well knowing that cramps are caused by a strength imbalance. The big question is, how do we fix that? Watch this video now. That will give you a really simple routine that you can follow at home with no equipment that will go a really long way to helping you fix any imbalances that you may have as a runner.